Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Welcome along to the Royal Society of Chemistry ChemCareers webinar. Today we're looking at a very pertinent topic, international job seeking. So really looking for a job outside of your home country. I'm very delighted today to be joined by Sarah Blackford, who's an academic careers advisor and consultant. Sarah, could you say hello?
Hi everyone. Hello from Germany.
So Sarah's living the international job seeking dream. She's currently working and living in Germany after moving out there from the UK. So I'm just gonna go through. This is us. I'm sat in my kitchen. Sarah's sat in her spare room in Germany. Sarah, could you just introduce yourself to our audience today?
Yeah, sure. I'd be delighted. Thank you very much for inviting me today. So my name's Sarah Blackford and I'm an academic careers advisor. I'm trained as a careers advisor. I have got a research background and a background in scientific publishing, and I tend to focus more on the biosciences, but I'm able to support PhD students, undergraduates, postdocs in a wide range of disciplines. And so I went freelance 3 years ago, and I moved to Germany 2 years ago because my partner got a job at an international school in Bavaria. So
Fantastic.
I have my own challenges to face. Yes.
So we'll maybe get onto that in a bit. And my name is Robert Bowles. I'm one of the careers advisors here at the Royal Society of Chemistry. So we give careers advice to our members all around the world. A whole range of different industries and sectors. So we'll tell you a bit more about that later. We're going to be on for about 40 minutes or so today. So thanks for joining us. The way it's going to work, myself and Sarah are going to go through some of our information that we'd like to share with you that hopefully you'll find useful. There will be the chance for you to answer questions. You can type them into me at any stage during the webinar, and then I'll hopefully be able to answer some of them, or hopefully most of them, at the end of the session as well. So without further ado, I'm going to move on and show you this. So this is really what we're going to go through today. Really look at the reasons why you might consider moving country to look for a new job. Then we're going to really kind of talk about helping you decide how and where to move, identify some of the barriers that you might encounter. We're going to talk a little bit about how that process might be different across different countries. And then we're going to get onto the meaty stuff, the sources of information that's available to help you, both from the RSC and from other sources as well. I thought I'd start really just by getting a bit more of a feel for kind of who you are, where are you. So what I thought I'd do is just launch some online polls. You can just answer them as quick as you can. So the first one is really just to kind of help us identify where you're going to be looking for work. So you've got some options on screen there. If you could answer that as quickly as you could, that would be really helpful. So half of you voted. So UK 25%, EU nearly 50%, a few in Asia and a few in the USA as well. But it's mostly UK and EU, which is good news because that's where we're both based, and that's the areas that we know most about. So thanks very much for that. And I'll just share the results so you can see that now, hopefully. That's where you're looking for jobs at the moment. Thank you. And then next one, if I may, just also really what sort of role are you looking for? So this is quite a simple one. Are you looking for an academic or a non-academic role? Again, that will kind of help us get a feel for how we kind of share the information with you. So roughly 50-50 split at the moment, so we're just about there. So again, that's good. So it's about a 50-50 split. Fantastic. Thank you. And just another one, highest level of qualification. Again, this will be quite an interesting one. I suspect I know the answer to this. Okay. So, yep, so about 2/3 of you currently hold a PhD. So thank you, that's useful. And fantastic. So moving on then, let's look at the reasons for moving country. It's really important, I think, for you to kind of really think about this. And again, we've got kind of a question for you on this. Bear with me a moment. Okay, I've lost the poll. But really, it's kind of really important for you to kind of think about why you might want to be moving. And I'm going to move on to that. I can't get that poll to work. Apologies. So really think about what the reasons are for you. Sarah, if we can maybe move over to you on this one. This is some research that you were aware of.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Robert. And I've really been collecting quite a lot of information on academic mobility and just moving overseas, abroad. And this was a paper that was produced was published in Nature Biotechnology in 2012. And it looks like, obviously, career prospects and improving career prospects was the main reason came out top, closely followed by people looking for moving to a quality research team. Obviously, those people were thinking about academia. And then, you know, a prestige of a foreign institution, getting in terms of their career development and their networking, and so better research infrastructure and faculties and so on, facilities. And so, you know, it's probably this reflects the kind of answers that you may have given yourself. You can see that the more personal reasons come lower down. So, in fact, it is the professional reasons that people choose to improve their career prospects and move and get the benefit of that opportunity.
Fantastic. So,
yeah.
Talk to us about this
Well,
survey, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, this was part of this survey, and there were just some key findings that came out, which showed that people who left their country of origin outperformed non-mobile scientists in terms of impact factor, in terms of the journal, the papers that they published in journals. But they did say this kind of, but be aware that it could be that the researchers who have the, you know, the best papers already, or have experienced a good PhD or something, are mobile, not the other way around, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that I do hear from people who are thinking of moving countries to improve their careers in terms of academia. And I always say, well, look, you know, think about who you want to go and work with, which group, which lab, and so on. Don't just move countries for the sake of it, because it's not necessary. It's actually moving to a research group. It's just that the chances are that research group will be outside of your country. So that's something to bear in mind.
Yeah, and another thing to think about there as well is, you know, when you do move country, there's a lot of things that you have to kind of adapt to and really get up to speed much quicker, and that can be a lot harder than just moving within your own country. So, for example, you know, make sure that think about your productivity. So how is moving country going to be impacting on your productivity? What other things you're going to have to be dealing with when you could be spending time, you know, doing research and publishing as well, and think about the impact moving country might have on your productivity, particularly if you are on quite a short-term contract or a short-term postdoc fellowship. So I'm just going to move on again, if I may. This is an article that was in paper, Sarah. Sorry, in Nature, Sarah.
Yeah, Nature. So there's been quite a lot of research and a lot of articles and surveys and so on done on academic mobility and the reasons why scientists move. And it's usual, but not always the case, that most people move from a less economically you know, high level country to a higher one. So people move because perhaps, as I said, they've got better facilities and they're better career prospects, and there's perhaps more funding for science in those countries. Although it does sometimes go the other way, and I saw an article recently where someone had moved to Thailand, and obviously, you know, not as economically high level as the country she was coming from, but she was doing very well. And I imagine that, you know, countries are on the up in certain areas of the world, so that's something to take into consideration.
So you might also want to think about your kind of work-life balance and the quality of life in the country that you're moving to. You know, just because you're going to earn a higher salary doesn't mean necessarily that you'll have a higher disposable income. You know, the cost of living can often be very, very high as well. So again, I guess what we're saying here is there's lots of factors at play, and just kind of moving to get a higher salary doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the right move for you.
Well, that's very true, because obviously tax for me, you know, is higher in Germany than it would be in the UK. But then again, I offset that against a great quality of life here. So yeah, there's definitely something to take into consideration.
Okay, so most important thing then, if you are thinking about moving countries, biggest question, probably first question you want to think about where you're going to move to. And that could be quite an overwhelming decision to make sometimes. You know, people quite often say to me, and I'm sure they do, you, Sarah, I want to move abroad for my career. But actually, you need to start limiting and narrowing down your options, or you can just get overwhelmed quite quickly. So being able to think about where you're moving to, why you want to move there, is really the starting point. So, you know, the labour market, you know, what sort of labour market are you moving into? Are the jobs that you're going to be looking for, are they going to be available? Why a country interests you? Do you want to just expand on that a little bit, Sarah?
Yeah, I think, you know, you must always obviously think about the labour market information first, because, you know, you want to be thinking about how you're going to get a job there and what opportunities are there for you in the particular field that you're interested in. And so certain countries do very well in certain different career sectors and in different industries. And there's plenty of information out there. And as researchers, you know, you've really got to get in there, you know, use LinkedIn, use other websites that are associated directly with particular countries, and see where, you know, there are likely to be better opportunities for you. And there may be language barriers. So again, you know, especially if you're going for a company, it may be that you're more likely to get into a bigger international corporate company in a country where you don't know the language than, you know, getting into a smaller company. And of course, again, with research groups, there are research groups, and you may have experienced this yourself, as many people are based in the EU, where you do speak English when you're actually in work, and then you know, obviously you need to learn the language for your personal reasons, but actually it can be an advantage, even if you've got a multinational research group that everyone speaks English, as opposed to some countries where you may find yourself in an institution where everyone's, you know, speaking their native language, be a disadvantage to you. So, you know, there are all these things that really, you know, you need to take into account. And I think, Robert, you know, you mentioned funding as well. Obviously, that's a really important factor.
Yeah, so I think for, you know, most academic research careers, a lot of your time is going to be spent chasing funding. So, you know, think about funding your living expenses to get yourself established. Think about who's going to pay your salary, who's going to be covering your research while you're actually in country. Some countries have more flexibility in who they fund than others. So certainly some countries where you have government funding in the EU, it tends to be, are you an EU citizen to qualify for that? In other countries, they will be looking for provide research funding for their own kind of their own citizens first, but then there will be other international fellowship schemes that you can access as well. So I guess if you're looking for research careers, yes, you can look for postdocs in the first instance, but then you have to look at whether you're going to be eligible for the projects that you're going to be working on. You can quite often build collaborations with people to kind of help apply for grants to fund your travel into that country. But then you also may want to be looking for international fellowships, which are kind of a bit more flexible and will give you access to countries that maybe you can access other. And that then obviously leads you onto the visas as well. So you need to think about the visa requirements for the country that you're looking to move to. Do you satisfy them? Can you find employers that can apply for a visa on your behalf? And so that's actually kind of really important to be thinking about when you're researching your options, to kind of think about how realistic is it that you're going to be able to get a visa, what are the routes that you can access a visa through, and make sure that they align with the reasons for you moving as well. If we just move on.
I think that's,
oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, well, sorry, let me just say one thing about that. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I think one of the things I find with people looking to move into a non-academic role in a company is sometimes when you're moving countries, it might be a first step from having done your PhD to get a postdoc, because of all this funding and because that the universities and research institutes are so much better set up for having an international staff, that you might do well to do that as a stepping stone into the country. And then when you're in the country, then you can use that time, maybe you've got a couple of years, 3 years, to learn the language, to get working, and then be able to then transition into a corporate, into a business, a company.
Fantastic. Really good advice, Sarah. Thank you. So this is a survey, again, linked to the one that we saw before. This is really kind of looking at, well, Sarah, talk us through it.
Well, it comes from that survey again. I mean, it was such a great big survey that they did. I think it was over 20,000 researchers. And, you can see that there's a big move of people out of India and into other countries. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got very low movement of people from the US and Japan. And that probably fits in again with this business of saying, well, you want to get better opportunities, perhaps a prestigious institution. It could just be a temporary thing, to move out of your country, get some experience in order to take that back to your own country's institutions and universities. Switzerland is high, I think, because they actually do encourage people to go abroad after they've done their PhD, or to do their PhD abroad, and so on. So you can see how it sort of works out. And then if you move on to the next slide, you see the other side of the spectrum, the other side of the coin, which is which countries tend to have more foreign people working, so in science and in research. And again, Switzerland comes very high because, again, they're very much encouraging this international movement, both in and outside of the country. So that must be probably some kind of policy that they have at the government level. And then a lot of people are moving to the English-speaking countries. Canada, Australia, US, and the UK are very high there. And then obviously you've got countries where they're more in the sort of northwest of the EU, and then further down. And again, India has the least number of people going in that direction, and similarly, Japan is not showing a very high mobility.
Okay.
So it's just interesting, I think, to see if you want to target particular countries, then that might give you an idea of what's going on, or what was going on in 2012. Of course, we're 8 years on from there now, and with COVID, we're not really sure how things are going to change.
Yeah, that's a whole separate podcast, but we'll maybe cover that in the future. So I think really thinking about your job seeking strategies, wherever you go, for whatever reason you want to go, there are certain kind of similarities to kind of for you to think about in terms of how you how you find a job, because that's ultimately what it's all going to come down to, whether you're successful or not. We have done a recent ChemCareers webinar on job searching as well, so do have a look at that. But this is some really good things to think about as you start that process. That point Sarah made about using your research skills is really important. I think you've got to really kind of take all your expertise in research and apply it for your own career, your own kind of job seeking as well. So first of all, finding out about the opportunities. Where are they? What are they doing? Which ones interest you? Who are the employers? So who are the employers that might kind of take you on, that might be able to kind of offer you a visa opportunity? We talked a little bit about what the barriers are. Some countries have more barriers than others. Again, that might be a factor in your decision making. Are you looking to move to a country or an area that is more accessible to kind of foreign workers than others? And really, that can be a really good way to start to kind of narrow down which countries you do want to move to, finding out about what their visa requirements are, finding about which ones you might apply for, and the working conditions can also be a big impact as well. Some different countries have very different working cultures sometimes, particularly in research areas. Do you want to move into a country that has a very that is demanding a lot of you as a researcher? Is that expecting you to be there a lot of hours, weekends too? So again, that might have an impact on you. Different countries and different organisations have different application processes. We'll get into that in a bit more. Networking is really key. I think when you're moving country, when you're trying to find jobs overseas outside of your home country, building up your networks as much as you can to try and access them, find the information you need, is really important. And we're going to move on to that in a bit more detail. But there's lots of things for you to be thinking about when you are looking to move overseas. So first of all, your employers. Sarah, do you want to talk these through a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to split things up a little bit, because obviously, we've got about 50-50 people interested in research or academic research, obviously, and then research or other work in companies and other organizations. So I'm just giving an idea of what kind of employers might be out there. And, you need to think, if you are going to do a postdoc, what kind of postdoc do you want? And will it be in a university, or will it be in a research institution where you're not with the student community, for example? If you're moving to a company, how are you going to get networked into that industry and get to know people who work in that area? And then, of course, there's charities and not-for-profit places as well, and it depends on the kind of work you want to do, which can influence the kind of organization that you want to work for. And then there are particular job sites that are aligned with particular countries. So, for example, Indeed.co.uk is obviously based in the UK. Then you've got Indeed.fi, you've got Indeed.de, and then you can kind of go searching. And I think there are other ones. There's Stepstone, there's Glassdoor, there's loads of other ones. And we're going to come on to that later, is where you can get support and help in finding these sites and finding ways in which you can investigate particular countries. But obviously, if you see a job that's advertised that's in their language, so if you're coming to Germany or you're going to France and the advert is in their language, the chances are that they will want the person to be able to be fluent in that language, and will expect them to. But you could always find out about that. But this is the point we were making earlier about this idea to use academic research as a stepping stone, because you're more likely to be in a multinational situation than you might be in a company. Although, you've got great big corporate organizations like Novo Nordisk and Boehringer and AstraZeneca and all these other ones that basically will be much more internationalized and likely to, speak a common language. So the language and the visas is going to sort of follow us all the way through this session, I think, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But we're going to point you to people who can help you with this. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. So for those of you, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, no, I was just going to say I've just put a few examples here of where you might find postdoctoral positions that you can do searches on particular countries, and that's where you're actually searching for job advertisements. So obviously these are people who've applied for the funding, they've got the postdoc positions available and they're advertising them, and there's loads of other places that you can look on social media and specialist discussion groups and so on. But be aware of the fellowships as well, where you can find a host in the country you want to go to. Obviously it's got to be someone aligned with your research, but it does give you a lot more flexibility, and you make the decision. But obviously your ethics, that's highly competitive, but you'll see here that there's visiting fellowships for those people who are outside of the EU and want to come to the EU. So there are lots of these different fellowships, and you've got to really do your homework and keep an eye on them, because sometimes the lead-in for them can be a year and a half, as long as that.
Yeah. So, you do need to be planning quite strategically about where you're going to go, why you're going to go, and how you're going to get there. So, yeah, I mean, as Sarah said, they're just a kind of few ones to kind of get you started, but do search for others. There are also other ones that are specific to other countries as well. Just bear with me. So, Sarah, talk us through this slide and kind of what we're showing here.
Yeah, basically it's just a screenshot of the European University Institute's website, which actually is really, really brilliant. What they've done is they've actually identified all the different career paths for academic careers in different countries. And this is really helpful because, postdocs get called all sorts of things. Well, the post job titles are all sorts of different ways of expressing them, like a research associate or a postdoctoral researcher or research fellow and so on. And then the academic career paths are very different. And in some countries, for example, you might have to do habilitation in order to do teaching. And so it's really worth, looking at these different career paths and being aware of that, especially if you do get an interview or, you are particularly interested in a country. The more you know and are aware of what's going on, the more confident person who wants to employ you will be that you're going in with your eyes open. So I think that's a great website to go and investigate.
Definitely, and that that point about different job titles, that applies to non-academic roles as well. So it implies it even more so. Different job titles, different organisations, different countries, they all call the same thing a different name. So when you are doing your searching, when you are doing your researching, part of what you're going to need to be researching is actually the language that employers are using to describe the jobs and the opportunities that they have available, and that will then really kind of help you to kind of focus in on the type of jobs that you might want to do. So this leads us nicely on to searching company vacancies.
Yes. Well, I've just put in an example here for LinkedIn. I mean, there's so many different ways you can look for job vacancies now. If you look at the top, I put in analytical chemist and Sweden, and look, these are the jobs that have come up. So, you can do that. You can use these filters. If you look at the top here, you can see right along here, you've got job type, remote, you've got all filters, which will, you can choose countries, you can choose all sorts of things. But again, remember, these are jobs that are being advertised, and it's a very limited view of the jobs that are available. We'll come on to that when we talk about networking. But if there are any particular countries that you're interested in, if you just click on the slide, I've also added another idea, which is to investigate the actual company. So if you've got your eye on any particular organization, or if you found people who work in that organization, you want to look into it a bit more, you can see that a lot of these big companies like BASF here, they've got career portals and are looking for people to actually approach them. and that limits the number of people that come towards them, and they don't get overwhelmed with thousands of applications.
Fantastic. So another strategy is to really kind of identify skills that are in short supply, and this kind of goes back to that screen where we talked about the importance of labour market information. So these are some that you've identified, Sarah. In your experience, these are all currently in short supply. Can you just talk about why that might help you in your job searching?
Yeah, I think what you need to do when you think about your own skills and your own experiences is to think about them in terms of skills rather than thinking about your particular specialism. I mean, obviously there will be scientific skills associated with your specialism that you've been learning and using either during your degree, perhaps in your final year project, or you might have done a year out or got experience that way, or during your PhD. And so don't identify yourself necessarily as a chemist or as someone who's worked on a particular molecule. Think about the type of skills and the way your mind works that will be really, really interesting for employers who are generating huge amounts of data now and need people to be able to understand it, to program, to do all sorts of other very technological, advanced, activities that they themselves won't be able to do. I think the difficulty, especially for PhD students, is that you just take your great skills for granted, whereas employers in the non-academic sector really value them. So think about how you're going to pitch yourself in your CV and how you want to be identified. So that you can, maybe see yourself as a data analyst as opposed to a chemist, for example.
And that's really important for you to kind of be able to really kind of demonstrate your value to an employer. That's going to help you the job, but it's also going to help you with things like visa applications as well. You need to be able to demonstrate to your advocate, your employer, to the person applying for a visa on your behalf, why it's really important that you kind of join them. So that's giving you a few things to think about. Job hunting is very different in lots of different countries. The example we've got here in CVs, and this is really just to kind of again reinforce that issue about doing your research before you start to look overseas. Just take something as simple as a CV. So here in the UK, a CV is a document that you use to kind of show to a potential employer that you could do that job. But it's not as simple as that. In other countries, it might be called a resume. In Germany, you have something called a Bewerbung. So even something as simple as the length can vary between countries. 1-page resume, for example, in France, 2 pages for a non-academic role. Maybe here in the UK, academic CVs often tend to be longer. Do you include a picture? Do you not? Again, that can vary between country. The onus is very much on you to find out which is most relevant for the country that you're applying for, and then follow the conventions of that country, and even sometimes that industry. Some countries, some industries are more conservative than others. If you're going for a job as a graphic designer, you maybe want to have a more creative or marketing role. Having more creative CV might be of value to you. Sarah, you've also put chronological against targeted. Can you explain a bit more about what you mean by those two different things?
I think most people have got a chronological CV, especially at the career stage that you're at. So you will have, your PhD or your degree, and then that will be followed by, in reverse chronological order, a history of your career, I suppose. That's what curriculum vitae means anyway. But actually, if you turn it around into a targeted CV, you might say, for example, put all your data analysis examples under one heading. So you might have professional skills, and you would then pull out all these different examples and evidence of using data analysis tools, or your communication skills, or your organizational skills. So you, instead of them being dotted all around your CV, they're all targeted. But I have spoken to some employers in different countries, and they're still quite traditional, and they prefer the chronological CV. So again, you know, it's a good idea to investigate this and find out what kind of you know, format that you should use. And then, you know, would you include interest, hobbies? You know, a lot of companies, I think, especially in the UK, they're quite interested in people's interests because it shows them as a whole person. But, you know, in other countries, they might be a bit suspicious if they see things like interests on your CV and wonder why they're there. So, yeah.
So very much the onus is on you to find out. So, you know, some countries a picture is kind of conventional, others it's not. So, you know, find out which applies for you. I'm going to move on now. Networking is really key, isn't it? Sarah, why is networking the best strategy?
It's always well, we always come back to networking, I think, in every single presentation, don't we? Because networking, you know, careers is about people. You know, you do your education and it is about doing exams, it's about getting your qualifications and so on. But apart from that, in your career, you are working with people in one way or other. And it's those people who will help you get a job and support you, you'll work with them. And so, you know, the more you can do research on people. So, you know, if you go onto LinkedIn, don't necessarily search for jobs, search for people who are doing those jobs. And so try and find a connection in some way. So if you think of that, somebody cold calling you on the telephone, you're not likely to answer it or you'll put the phone down on them. But if they say, oh, so-and-so said I should call you, and it's a familiar name, there's a connection there, you're more likely to pay attention to them, and that's how it works. So obviously we've got some examples here, but I think, Robert, you were going to say something about what the RSC can do to help people.
Definitely. So, you know, the RSC, we're a member organisation. We're built on networking. We're built on helping people to make contact with each other. You know, we have 50,000 members. They're spread all around the world. They're working in a wide range of sectors and industries and companies. Becoming a member gets you access to a lot of those people. You've instantly got something in common with them. You're both an RSC member. We can put you in contact with each other via your area of chemistry, via your geographical location as well. So, you know, looking for ways to kind of meet and make a connection with other people is very much something that the RSC can kind of help you with. But I think you do also then need to, you know, once you have identified who the people are, where they're based, you do have to think about how you're going to approach them. You know, you do have to introduce yourself. You almost need to have a kind of an idea of what you're going to say to them, researching them, their role, their organisation, before you contact them. So you actually show an interest in them. You know, that comes back to, you know, if someone cold calls you out of the blue, they don't know anything about you, don't know anything about your research, your university, your organisation, you're much less likely to kind of spend any time with them or respond to them than if they show that they understand who you are, what you're researching, what you've recently published, and then how they can kind of fit in within that research group, how they can contribute to your research, how they can contribute to the organisation or the company that they might want to be joining. So yes, research people, network with people, but also before you get to that stage, find out as much as you can before you actually reach out to them is really important. We've got about 80 interest groups in different areas of chemistry. We have geographical, local sections all across the world. So they're kind of a really good way for you to kind of build up your networks in countries or locations where you're not currently based. And so this is really kind of following on from what I was talking about there, writing to them speculatively, approaching people out of the blue, cold calling you mentioned. Sarah, why is this a bit more important? Talk us through what we have here.
Well, this actually sort of compounds what you've just said. So I think it's quite good because it's Rachel Coulthard-Graf works for EMBL in Heidelberg in Germany, and they asked postdocs, they did a survey of how they got their first postdoc position, and you can see that the highest one is an email to a PI, so writing speculatively to that principal investigator is the best way to do it. But as you said, you have to do your homework. You need to find out everything about that person from the internet, from, you know, their papers or whatever it is, and really show knowledge of what they're doing, and then you sort of say how you yourself would be able to fit into that. Obviously, it's more tricky for approaching companies. It's much harder because you're not in that community already, and it's harder to find the connection. And that's why it's useful, to network with people in that company or people that you're connected with in some way, and sort of do it in a stepping stone kind of a way.
But you can. I mean, there is still information to be had about companies as well. You can find out about their products, their services, find out about their customers. A lot of companies are publishing stuff in press releases or on their website. So again, when you're still reaching out to them, show that it's almost like, why do you want to work for them? What interests you in working for that organisation, rather than just saying, oh, I'd like to come and work with you. You've got to kind of be able to say why.
You're right. It's almost like you get a mini interview in a sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you'll be being assessed,
Yeah. And that's actually how you get them to work on your behalf. That's how you get them to help you. If you don't have that connection, if you don't show interest in what they're doing, that there's actually no reason for them to help you. So
I think it's that case, isn't it? People help you. Yeah.
Because
people help people who are showing that they're helping themselves.
Absolutely.
As well. They're making the effort.
They've got to have something in it as well. So finding connections. So this is the Royal Society of Chemistry on LinkedIn. So again, this is another way you can kind of find connections. We've got an interest group on LinkedIn. I think there's about 20,000 people signed up to that group at the moment. So again, you can filter it by location. So if you are looking to move into Germany, for example, here you've got 1,000 people that are in that LinkedIn group that are currently working in Germany. So instantly you've got 1,000 people that you can start to research and find out how they might be able to help you. They may not be able to, or they may not be in an area that interests you, but it could be a really good starting point for you to kind of start that search. So that's just the first one. So instantly you've got a name, you've got where they work, you've got their job title. If you're lucky, you might already have some mutual connections. So again, it can be a really good way to kind of start building your networks really as quickly, as efficiently as you can. And actually at the moment, a lot of people at the moment are working from home. So now is a really good time to be doing this sort of networking and building up your connection of people that might be able to help you. Anything else you wanted to add on that one, Sarah?
Yeah, I think if you put the next slide up, you'll see that he was at University College London originally. So, there you can see that, if you were, at that college yourself, then you could contact him and say, oh, I was also at University College London. I see you've moved to Germany. I wonder if we could connect. And then if he agrees, then you could come back and say, oh, I wonder if I could just ask you about how you made that transition, have you got any advice for me? And then you start opening up the conversations. You don't hit people with huge amounts of questions and a great big long email to begin with. Just tap them for a few questions to start with, see if they respond positively. And as you say, not everybody, you won't continue connections with everybody. But even if you only find one or two, that are going to help you, that's all you need, really.
Great stuff. So another way is via Twitter, for example. So the Royal Society of Chemistry, we're on Twitter. We've got 95,000 followers on Twitter. I'm not showing off. Sarah, you explain why that's important.
Well, I know that not so many people are on Twitter as they are on LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is so important to be on nowadays, because it's a massive global database that everybody's using, and people are communicating about recruitment companies, headhunting and all sorts. But Twitter is less so, and I think it's a little bit more quirky. But you can find out lots and lots of interesting information. You can follow people, you can find out what people are talking about. There are companies on there, there are journals, there are professors and so on. And so I think, don't be too wary of it. I know you hear, bad things about it sometimes, but actually in a professional sense, it's very, very useful, and you do get a lot of very rich information. And here you see what I've done is I've clicked on followers of the Royal Society of Chemistry. So you'll see these are people who are interested in chemistry, and then you might find a few people who are interesting to you, and you follow them, and you maybe look at their tweets and they retweet, and it's the happenstance in a way. You find things that you weren't necessarily looking for, but they tend to be the most interesting things in the end.
Absolutely, and it could be a really good way for finding research groups as well. So if you're looking for, which research groups you might want to join, a lot of research groups now have their own kind of Twitter account. So instantly, just on this one, for example, there's one there. There's a laboratory for functional inorganic materials. Instantly, you know what they're researching, what their interests are. So instantly, you can start to see if that would be of interest or relevant for you in your job hunt.
Yeah, I was just flagging up that you're on LinkedIn, but I think we've already covered that.
I think we have.
So
we'll move on.
Yeah, move on.
Time is pressing. Time is pressing.
Yeah, flag up the website as well.
Yeah, I will mention this. So on MRSC.org, this is basically an example of some of our recent partnerships. So as you can see there, we've got a number of partnerships with a number of organisations around the world. Some of them are other chemical societies. We're doing a lot with the Chinese Chemical Society at the moment. In Germany, forgive my massacre of the German language, but it's the Gesellschaft Deutsche Chemiker. So again, if you're looking to move particular countries, chances are they have got a chemical society within that country, and again, it can kind of just give you an instant start to kind of building up your networks within those countries. There are also ideas for companies and other organisations that you might want to work for. Some of them are funding bodies. So again, be on the lookout for any source of information to help you build up your professional network to kind of really help you make that transition to where you want to go to. I'm going to get onto some more specific sources of help and information as well. Sarah, do you want to talk us through these and why you put these on the slides and how they can help people?
Yeah, so this is just a kind of quick list. Obviously, your university or the university, every university will have an international office, and obviously they're dealing with visas and that kind of thing all the time. So, I mean, if you do get offered a position, you can contact them to get help. Euraccess, I'll talk about them in a bit more detail in a moment. An expat site's more for kind of personal things that help you when you actually go to a country, or if you're thinking of going to a country where you can access people already living there and it's more of a social network. You may already have professional networks and personal networks. I mean, especially if you are thinking of a research position where collaborators or people that you're already in a network with in your particular discipline are based in those countries. The alumni office, again, at the university, plus I put there because there's other ways to track down alumni. So alumni are people who've graduated from that university or from your university, again, who you have a connection with. Social media we're already showing are really, really helpful places to look, and specialist groups. So I think if I just go into a bit more detail, I think the next slide is just really to flag up Euraccess. So a lot of you are in the EU, and if you are thinking of moving to other countries within the EU, then this is a fantastic site. Euraccess has set up a national portal for every single country in the EU, and the UK has one as well. It's the British Council who represent, but each one will tell you all the ins and outs of pensions, the social security, the health, and everything you need to know, to get advice from that country. And they have an office dedicated to help researchers to move around more easily. And they also advertise jobs, and they offer development and other types of information. For Euraccess within Europe, that's brilliant. I would go there first.
Fantastic, good stuff.
Then I've just said, this is just an example where if you want to use alumni, I've just used this American University of Beirut as an example. If you go into LinkedIn and go onto the website of the university, for example, your own university where you are based at the moment, and you go into alumni, and put in, say, France, if you were thinking of moving to France, you can see all the people who are at your university who now work in France. And so if you just put up the next slide, Robert, you can see that, you know, where they work, where they live, where they work. And then if you scroll down, you can see all these different people who are in different jobs again. So alumni are a really rich source. So you can use the alumni office, but you can also access them and find them on your from LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
So,
fantastic.
you know, how we survive without LinkedIn before, I have no idea. And then specialist groups, I've just targeted this Researchers Without Borders. I just happened to go on their Facebook site the other day, and I can see, I mean, this is quite an old post, but even so, they've got an article on what is an international research career and tips. So I clicked on that and went through, and then, you know, just had a look at the advice that they were giving, and it's very much in line with what we're saying, Robert, so that's good. So if you click on the next slide, you'll see, look, find your local Your Access office. There are scientific work visas and work permits, so be aware of that, because if you're having a PhD, can actually give you an advantage in particular countries, so you'll get extra points for that, so where another person might not get that. And then I'm in this expat group. I just thought I'd flag it up. So when you are going to a country, you can go on Facebook and find groups where your nationality, when they're based in that country, and they're asking questions and supporting each other and giving a bit of a taste of home as well. There's a few well-known UK articles there that people are craving for.
Really important
in Germany.
to kind of get
I
that
managed to
sorted
find
out.
the articles the other day. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And then just quickly moving on, if you are thinking of going with a partner, there are particular countries that do welcome and do support partners and give them sort of events, things that they can help them to find jobs or have a community, a network when they're there. So particularly in Scandinavian countries, and here you've got this career support network, and here's an example of Sweden, and they're very supportive of families as well. So you might target the country according to that. And then we're just finishing up with reasons not to move country. Not everybody wants to move countries, and you may have decided, yeah, I'm not really sure, I'm thinking about it. And then, you know, here's a survey that was done to show reasons, and obviously it's the personal family reasons that can really be a barrier. But look at the next slide and look at different ways in that you could actually get experience of another country. It wouldn't be such a huge upheaval, and it wouldn't be such a commitment. So things like a short-term sabbatical, visiting a research group, a field course, and you can get grants and you can get funding to support you in these things, and even to get in an internship. I saw some internships being offered the other day in a company, I think it was Bayer, and they were looking for master's students to have internships with them. So
fantastic.
You know,
I'm gonna move on because I'm aware time's ticking about. So, you know, I will just say as well at this point, you will be able to view this again afterwards as well. So we'll be uploading it to YouTube. So if we do scoot through these last slides, apologies for that, but there will be the chance for you to go back and watch it again afterwards as well. So this is the solo scientist and the flexible networking that you were talking about there, Sarah, on that previous slide.
yeah, and I think even more so now since the COVID situation and people working from home, I think in the future, anyone who's thinking of remote working may be more able to do that, as companies see that it's actually not so difficult to run the office with people working remotely. So there's things like solo scientists or roving scientists, you know, where you're feeding into different projects and able to do everything on the computer.
Fantastic. Some more sources of information for you. There's some more information there on Sarah's website. You can click on academic mobility if that's of interest to you. I'm not going to get into visas because we could do another session just on those. But always, you know, check with the country of destination as a starting point. We have had a couple of questions come in. I'm going to get to those in the end. A couple of them were about visas, so I'll kind of flag those up towards the end. We've mentioned some of those kind of research opportunities for funding your research, but the onus is very much on you to kind of find out what you're eligible for, what research funding is available in your area of expertise. That's part of being an academic researcher these days, and so you need to kind of develop that as a skill as well. I'm going to finish off with a bit more help and support that's available from the Royal Society of Chemistry. So this webinar is part of our ChemCareers series that we run via our careers service. We currently have a careers website that's open to everyone. There's a lot more information around things like CV applications, around applying for jobs. We do also provide one-to-one career support as well. So again, if you are a member, you can access that, and we can do that via Skype. I've done consultations in the last couple of months in people in Japan, in China, people in the US or looking to move to the US. The networks I mentioned earlier, really important way for you to build up your professional networks by interest group and by local section as well. We do offer travel and research grants. So in that previous slide where Sarah was talking about, alternative to moving abroad, we do have grants available for travel and research. Unfortunately, most of them are kind of on hold at the moment, but as soon as those are open for applications, you're very welcome to apply. What I would suggest is maybe why don't you use the time at the moment where everything is locked down, no one's moving around quite as much as they would be, to actually find out how to apply for those grants, find out what the criteria are, talk to people that have been successful in achieving those grants in the past. Again, that's part of your research skills that you can be building up at the moment. Conferences, most of our conferences and workshops have gone online at the moment. So, again, you don't have to travel to an international conference to do that networking. You can do it all from the comfort of your own home as well. So again, there's ways for you to kind of build up your networks without actually having to get out and about at the moment. Thanks very much for your time. Thanks very much for your attention. We do have a few questions. I'm going to quickly go through some of them. If you do want to ask, type away. So one of the ones here, someone called Karina talked about some organisations have to prove that they can't recruit to be able to get a visa. The role has to be unique or uncommon. Otherwise, they'll just be able to find someone in the country. I think there's an element to that, but there are ways around that. I worked for an organisation who placed a very small advert in a very unpopular newspaper to fulfil the requirements for that for someone that they had already lined up. So if you do make those connections, you can actually get an advocate to kind of go into bat for you and to kind of help you get through that process rather than you having to kind of be at the mercy of rules and regulations. So again, that could be another way that kind of building up your network can kind of help you with that. And again, finding networks in the countries you want to move through can kind of help you with the visa and the work permit limitations. So Eran has again talked about HR not always taking time to deal with the working permit or the bureaucracy. How do I pass that? I don't think there's going to be any shortcuts on that, Erin. But again, think about finding an advocate, finding someone within the network that can help you with that. Find people that have already negotiated it successfully. What can you learn from their experience? A lot of these things, you don't have to face it and do it on your own. That's where your networks can really help you. Sarah, this is maybe one you can help with. Graduate from a Latin American university. Find it difficult to translate the grades due to contrast between the systems. I know there are some online sites and guides that can help with that. Is that something that you've come across and you can provide more insight to?
Yes, I think, yeah, I mean, again, go to the international office because they will have all the equivalents. For all the international students that come to universities, they have to always be doing this. For people applying for degrees, master's courses and PhDs. So I would say if you are targeting any particular university or country, that you would be able to target any international office, or your own international office perhaps would be able to help you with that.
Yeah, great stuff. Here's an interesting one. A reference for the impact of COVID been discussed by researchers in their work. I think, to be honest, I think that's from Suma. I think it might be a little bit early for everyone to understand exactly what that impact is going to be. I think research funding, certainly here in the UK, they're trying to keep that going as much as they can. But I think there will be an impact down the line. There are various publications here in the UK that do have reference of people, the impact certainly on UK universities. I can't think of a reference off the top of my head, but just try Googling it and see what comes up. Let us know if you find any. I think there'll be more of that coming through over the coming months. I think it's still a bit early. Embargo on funding likely to be lifted. I think that probably relates to the MRSC travel grants. To be honest, we're not sure at the moment, for exactly the reason that I mentioned above. I suspect we're not going to be awarding any, certainly by the end of this year. It is probably likely to be for travel maybe from mid-2021 onwards, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I would say either email our funding team, they will have much more information on that than I currently do. And I think that will probably apply to kind of funding across the world as well. Someone called Pratik has asked, is cold messaging really helpful? Hopefully we covered that earlier. I think the key caveat I would say there is yes, if you do it right. I think if you just email a researcher you've never met, never had any contact that blue with, and say, have you got any postdocs? You might get you're likely to be ignored. If you actually go through that time to find out about them, about their research interests, how you could contribute to that, they're going to be much more receptive to you. And you saw that online survey. That's how 1/3 of people get their postdocs. So yes, it is helpful, but you need to do it in the right way. And again, if you need help or support with that, do get in touch with us. And if you're an RSC member, we can give you some more guidance on how to do that. So job opportunities available to freshers, jobs highly paid in chemistry. So again, find out. That's Praveen. What sort of jobs are out there. I want to explore more and learn more. There's never been a better time in the history of job searching and career guidance to find out for yourself. Sarah, do you want to just kind of, maybe this might be quite a nice way to finish up, just talk about the importance of doing that and the importance of actually finding out what you need to find out for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much out there for you to be able to find out. It's almost overwhelming. I think these filters are going to be very, very useful, but you yourself, you've got to know what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got to really reflect and think about what things you really enjoy doing. Do you enjoy the lab work, or are you more of a communicator? Are you more of a social person, or you like organizing things? So try and sort of think about what your key skills are. You may be great at programming and these other technical skills, and then decide, right, how are you going to pitch yourself? Because you've got to be very, when you're doing that kind of getting in touch with people, you've got to be very sure about what you want, because they're going to ask you those kind of questions. They don't want you to sit back and go, oh, well, whatever, what have you got? I'll do anything. They don't want that. They want you to be very, very targeted and very focused. So, look around at people and organizations, and, as much as you find out about your own research landscape, and all the literature and the other things that are going on around it, do the same for your career. So, really think of it as a parallel job, because applying for a job and getting a job is a full-time, well, it's not full-time because you can't do it all the time, but it is a job in itself.
Fantastic. That's a really great place to leave. Thanks ever so much for your time today, Sarah. Hopefully...
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Hopefully the people listening in and looking at the slides. I've found a lot of that useful. If you do want further follow-up, there's all my contact information on the screen there. And good luck with your moving. Good luck with wherever you decide to go and whatever you decide to do. Thanks very much. Goodbye, everyone.